The rain fell in sheets as Evelyn Blackthorn's car wound its way up the narrow, tree-lined road leading into Ravenswood. The wipers struggled to keep pace with the downpour, and the headlights barely pierced the thick fog that clung to the forest like a shroud. Evelyn tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She hadn't been back to Ravenswood in over a decade, and the town looked as unwelcoming as she remembered. The town square was deserted, the cobblestone streets slick with rain. The colonial-era buildings loomed like silent sentinels, their windows dark and lifeless. Evelyn drove past the old church, its steeple piercing the low-hanging clouds, and turned onto Blackthorn Lane. The road narrowed, the trees pressing in on either side, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. At the end of the lane stood Blackthorn Manor. The estate was a shadow of its former self. The once grand facade was now crumbling, the windows boarded up, and the roof sagging under the weight of time. Ivy crawled up the walls, its tendrils snaking into every crack and crevice. Evelyn parked her car and stepped out, the rain soaking her within seconds. She stared up at the manor, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. The key to the front door felt heavy in her hand, as if it carried the weight of generations. She inserted it into the lock, the mechanism groaning in protest, and pushed the door open. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Evelyn stepped inside, her boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The interior was a labyrinth of shadows and forgotten memories. Furniture draped in white sheets loomed like ghosts, and the walls were lined with portraits of her ancestors, their eyes following her every move. Evelyn made her way to the study, where her mother's lawyer had said the family journal would be. The journal was exactly where he'd said it would be, resting on the desk beneath a layer of dust. Evelyn picked it up, the leather cover cold to the touch. She flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing as she realized it was written in Latin. She'd need to translate it, but something about the journal felt alive, as if it were watching her. A noise from upstairs made her freeze. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably soft, rhythmic tapping like fingernails on wood. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she climbed the stairs, the journal clutched tightly in her hand. The sound led her to a door at the end of the hallway, the one with the raven and thorn symbol carved into the frame. She pushed the door open, the hinges screeching in protest. The room was empty, save for a single chair placed in the center. On the chair was a raven, its beady eyes fixed on her. It cawed once, a harsh guttural sound, before flying out the open window. Evelyn's breath came in shallow gasps as she backed out of the room, her mind racing. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to find them alone. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number of the only person she could think of, Marcus Hale, the journalist who'd been investigating Ravenswood's disappearances. As she waited for him to answer, the tapping started again, louder this time. Evelyn turned to face the door, her heart in her throat. The symbol on the frame seemed to glow faintly, the thorns twisting and writhing like living things. Ravenswood had secrets, and Evelyn was about to uncover them whether she wanted to or not. The rain had stopped by the time Marcus Hale arrived at Blackthorn Manor. Evelyn stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching as his beat-up sedan crunched over the gravel driveway. He stepped out, his trench coat flapping in the wind, and gave her a curt nod. He was taller than she'd expected, with sharp features and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. His eyes, however, were what caught her attention. They were the color of storm clouds, intense and searching. "Evelyn Blackthorn?" he asked, his voice gravelly but calm. "That's me," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Thanks for coming." Marcus glanced around the foyer, his expression unreadable. "Nice place. Creepy, but nice." "It's been in my family for generations," Evelyn said, leading him to the study. "But I didn't call you here to talk about real estate." "The disappearances," Marcus said, cutting straight to the point. "You think they're connected to your mother's death?" The rain fell in sheets as Evelyn Blackthorn's car wound its way up the narrow, tree-lined road leading into Ravenswood. The wipers struggled to keep pace with the downpour, and the headlights barely pierced the thick fog that clung to the forest like a shroud. Evelyn tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She hadn't been back to Ravenswood in over a decade, and the town looked as unwelcoming as she remembered. The town square was deserted, the cobblestone streets slick with rain. The colonial-era buildings loomed like silent sentinels, their windows dark and lifeless. Evelyn drove past the old church, its steeple piercing the low-hanging clouds, and turned onto Blackthorn Lane. The road narrowed, the trees pressing in on either side, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. At the end of the lane stood Blackthorn Manor. The estate was a shadow of its former self. The once grand facade was now crumbling, the windows boarded up, and the roof sagging under the weight of time. Ivy crawled up the walls, its tendrils snaking into every crack and crevice. Evelyn parked her car and stepped out, the rain soaking her within seconds. She stared up at the manor, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. The key to the front door felt heavy in her hand, as if it carried the weight of generations. She inserted it into the lock, the mechanism groaning in protest, and pushed the door open. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Evelyn stepped inside, her boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The interior was a labyrinth of shadows and forgotten memories. Furniture draped in white sheets loomed like ghosts, and the walls were lined with portraits of her ancestors, their eyes following her every move. Evelyn made her way to the study, where her mother's lawyer had said the family journal would be. The journal was exactly where he'd said it would be, resting on the desk beneath a layer of dust. Evelyn picked it up, the leather cover cold to the touch. She flipped through the pages, her brow furrowing as she realized it was written in Latin. She'd need to translate it, but something about the journal felt alive, as if it were watching her. A noise from upstairs made her freeze. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably soft, rhythmic tapping like fingernails on wood. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest as she climbed the stairs, the journal clutched tightly in her hand. The sound led her to a door at the end of the hallway, the one with the raven and thorn symbol carved into the frame. She pushed the door open, the hinges screeching in protest. The room was empty, save for a single chair placed in the center. On the chair was a raven, its beady eyes fixed on her. It cawed once, a harsh guttural sound, before flying out the open window. Evelyn's breath came in shallow gasps as she backed out of the room, her mind racing. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to find them alone. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number of the only person she could think of, Marcus Hale, the journalist who'd been investigating Ravenswood's disappearances. As she waited for him to answer, the tapping started again, louder this time. Evelyn turned to face the door, her heart in her throat. The symbol on the frame seemed to glow faintly, the thorns twisting and writhing like living things. Ravenswood had secrets, and Evelyn was about to uncover them whether she wanted to or not. The rain had stopped by the time Marcus Hale arrived at Blackthorn Manor. Evelyn stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching as his beat-up sedan crunched over the gravel driveway. He stepped out, his trench coat flapping in the wind, and gave her a curt nod. He was taller than she'd expected, with sharp features and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. His eyes, however, were what caught her attention. They were the color of storm clouds, intense and searching. "Evelyn Blackthorn?" he asked, his voice gravelly but calm. "That's me," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Thanks for coming." Marcus glanced around the foyer, his expression unreadable. "Nice place. Creepy, but nice." "It's been in my family for generations," Evelyn said, leading him to the study. "But I didn't call you here to talk about real estate." "The disappearances," Marcus said, cutting straight to the point. "You think they're connected to your mother's death?" The study was silent, except for the soft scratching of Evelyn's pen as she worked to translate the journal. The Latin was archaic, filled with words and phrases that didn't quite make sense. She had been at it for hours, her eyes straining in the dim light of the desk lamp. The rain had started again, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. The journal was a mix of personal entries, cryptic notes, and diagrams that seemed to depict rituals. Evelyn's mother had always been secretive, but this was something else entirely. The more Evelyn read, the more she realized her family's history was far darker than she had ever imagined. One passage in particular caught her attention. "The veil grows thin and the unbound stirs. The circle seeks to break the seal, but the blood of the Blackthorn line holds the key." Beware the raven's mark, for it is both a warning and a call. The thorns bind, but they also protect. Evelyn frowned, her mind racing. What was the unbound, and what did it have to do with her family? She flipped to another page where a detailed diagram of a ritual circle was drawn. At its center was a symbol raven encircled by thorns, identical to the one carved into the doorframe upstairs. A sudden knock at the study door made her jump. She turned to see Marcus standing in the doorway, his coat damp from the rain. "Any luck?" he asked, stepping inside. Evelyn gestured to the journal. "Some. It's mostly about rituals and something called the unbound. My family seems to have been involved in some kind of cult." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "A cult? That's not exactly comforting." "Tell me about it," Evelyn muttered. "There's also something about a seal in the blood of the Blackthorn line. I think they're talking about me." Marcus leaned over her shoulder, studying the journal. "This symbol, it's the same one from the doorframe, isn't it?" Evelyn nodded. "It's everywhere. In the journal, on the door, even in some of the portraits downstairs. It's like it's following me." Marcus straightened, his expression serious. "I did some digging on Eleanor Graves. She's been the town historian for decades, but there's not much else about her. No family, no past. It's like she appeared out of thin air." "Convenient," Evelyn said dryly. "What about the hollowed circle? Did you find anything?" "Not much," Marcus admitted. "They're a closed group. No public records, no members listed. But I did find something interesting, a series of articles from the 1800s about a witch cult in Ravenswood. The descriptions match what's in the journal." Evelyn's stomach churned. "So my ancestors were part of a witch cult, and now the hollowed circle is trying to, what, bring it back?" "Maybe," Marcus said. "Or maybe they're trying to finish what your ancestors started." Before Evelyn could respond, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Both of them froze, their eyes darting to the ceiling. "What was that?" Marcus asked, his voice low. "I don't know," Evelyn said, standing up. "But I'm not waiting around to find out." She grabbed a flashlight from the desk and headed for the stairs, Marcus close behind. The second floor was dark, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning outside. Evelyn's heart pounded as she approached the door with the raven and thorn symbol. It was slightly ajar. The wood splintered, as if someone or something had forced it open. "Stay behind me," Marcus said, stepping in front of her. He pushed the door open slowly, the hinges creaking. The room was empty, but the chair in the center had been knocked over. The window was wide open, the curtains flapping in the wind. Evelyn's flashlight beam swept across the floor, revealing something that made her blood run cold, a trail of muddy footprints leading from the window to the door. "Someone was in here," Marcus said, his voice tense. Evelyn's grip on the flashlight tightened. "But how? We're on the second floor." Marcus walked over to the window and peered out. "There's a tree branch right outside. Someone could have climbed up." Evelyn's mind raced. If the hollowed circle was watching her, they were closer than she thought. She turned to leave, but something on the floor caught her eye, a small, crumpled piece of paper. She picked it up and unfolded it, her hands trembling. It was a note, written in shaky handwriting. "The circle knows. They're coming. Trust no one." Evelyn showed it to Marcus, her heart pounding. "Lila," she said. "She must have left this." Marcus frowned. "If she's warning us, why didn't she just say something?" "Because she's scared," Evelyn said. "And if she's scared, we should be too." They returned to the study, the note clutched in Evelyn's hand. She sat down at the desk, her mind racing. The journal, the symbol, the note, it was all connected. But how? Marcus broke the silence. "We need to find Lila. If she knows something, we need to hear it." Evelyn nodded. "Tomorrow, first thing. But for now." She glanced at the journal, the Latin script seeming to taunt her. "I need to keep translating. There's something here. I can feel it." Marcus hesitated, then pulled up a chair. "I'll stay, just in case." Evelyn gave him a grateful smile. As she returned to the journal, the storm outside seemed to grow louder, the wind howling like a warning. Somewhere in the shadows, the hollowed circle was watching, and Evelyn knew they were running out of time. The storm raged through the night, its fury unabated by the time dawn broke. Evelyn had barely slept, her dreams filled with shadowy figures, and the sound of ravens cawing. She woke to find Marcus still in the study, his head resting on the desk next to the journal. The sight of him there, steadfast despite the danger, gave her a small measure of comfort. She shook him gently, and he stirred, blinking up at her. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," Evelyn replied. "We need to find Lila." Marcus nodded, stretching as he stood. "Any idea where to start?" "The coffee shop," Evelyn said. "She said she works there. Maybe someone knows where she is." They left Blackthorn Manor, the morning air crisp and damp. The town of Ravenswood was slowly coming to life, but the streets were still eerily quiet. The coffee shop, a quaint little place called the Roasted Raven, was just off the town square. A bell jingled as they stepped inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. The shop was empty, except for a young barista wiping down the counter. She looked up as they entered, her expression wary. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for Lila Hartman," Evelyn said. "Is she here?" The barista hesitated, glancing toward the back room. "Lila didn't come in today. She called in sick." Evelyn exchanged a glance with Marcus. "Do you know where she lives?" The barista shook her head. "Sorry, Lila keeps to herself. She doesn't talk much about her personal life." Evelyn's heart sank, but Marcus stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "It's important that we find her. If you hear from her, can you let us know?" The barista nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "Sure, I'll let her know you're looking for her." As they left the coffee shop, Evelyn felt a growing sense of unease. "She's hiding something," she said. "I can feel it." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but we're not going to get answers standing here. Let's try the town historian Eleanor Graves. If anyone knows about the hollowed circle, it's her." Evelyn hesitated. Lila said not to trust anyone. "What if Eleanor's part of it?" "Then we'll be careful," Marcus said. "But we need to take the risk. We're running out of time." They made their way to the Ravenswood Historical Society, a small ivy-covered building on the edge of town. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old paper and dust. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing blue eyes stood behind the counter, sorting through a stack of documents. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "Are you Eleanor Graves?" Marcus asked. The woman nodded. "I am." "And you are?" "Marcus Hale," he said, flashing his press badge. "This is Evelyn Blackthorn. We're looking into the history of Ravenswood specifically, the hollowed circle." Eleanor's expression didn't change, but Evelyn noticed a flicker of something in her eye-sphere, perhaps, or recognition. "The hollowed circle is a myth," she said. "A local legend. There's no evidence they ever existed." Evelyn stepped forward, holding up the journal. "What about this? It mentions the circle by name, and it's written by my ancestors." Eleanor's gaze fell on the journal, and for a moment, she looked almost hungry, but the expression was gone as quickly as it appeared. "May I see it?" she asked, her voice steady. Evelyn hesitated, then handed it over. Eleanor flipped through the pages, her fingers trembling slightly. "This is remarkable," she said. "Where did you find it?" "In Blackthorn Manor," Evelyn said. "It belonged to my mother." Eleanor closed the journal and handed it back, her expression unreadable. "I'm afraid I can't help you. The hollowed circle is nothing more than a story." Evelyn's frustration boiled over. "People are disappearing. My mother died under mysterious circumstances. And you're telling me it's just a story?" Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "I suggest you be careful, Miss Blackthorn. Ravenswood has a way of consuming those who dig too deep." Before Evelyn could respond, Marcus stepped in. "Thank you for your time," he said, taking Evelyn's arm and leading her out of the building. Once outside, Evelyn turned to him, her anger still simmering. "Why did you stop me? She knows something." "I know," Marcus said, "but pushing her wasn't going to get us anywhere. We need to be smarter about this." Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "Then what do we do?" Marcus glanced back at the Historical Society, his expression thoughtful. "We wait. If she's part of the hollowed circle, she'll make a move. And when she does, we'll be ready." As they walked back to Blackthorn Manor, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The town seemed to close in around her, its secrets lurking just beneath the surface. She glanced at the journal in her hands, the raven and thorn symbol seeming to glow faintly in the sunlight. Somewhere in the shadows, the hollowed circle was waiting, and Evelyn knew they were running out of time. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Ravenswood. Evelyn and Marcus returned to Blackthorn Manor, the weight of their discoveries pressing heavily on their shoulders. The journal lay open on the study desk, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and warnings. Evelyn's fingers traced the edges of the paper, her mind racing. "We need to figure out what they're planning," Evelyn said, her voice low. "If the hollowed circle is trying to break this seal, we have to stop them." Marcus leaned against the desk, his arms crossed. "Agreed, but we're missing something. There's a pattern here, something that ties all of this together." Evelyn flipped through the journal, her eyes scanning the Latin text. The journal mentions a thin place. It says Ravenswood is where the veil between worlds is weakest. That's why they're here. Marcus frowned. "A thin place? Like a portal?" "Exactly," Evelyn said. "And if they're trying to summon this unbound entity, they'll need to perform a ritual at the right time and place." "Which is?" Marcus asked. Evelyn hesitated, her fingers pausing on a page filled with astrological diagrams. The journal mentions a celestial alignment, a rare event, when the veil is at its thinnest. "It's happening soon, very soon." Before Marcus could respond, a sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Evelyn's heart leapt into her throat. She exchanged a glance with Marcus, who motioned for her to stay back as he approached the door. He opened it cautiously, revealing Lila Hartman standing on the porch. Her auburn hair was disheveled, and her green eyes were wide with fear. She looked over her shoulder nervously before stepping inside. "Lila," Evelyn said, relief and concern warring in her voice. "Are you okay?" Lila shook her head, her hands trembling. "They know I talked to you. They're watching me. I had to come. I couldn't stay away." Marcus closed the door behind her, his expression grim. "Who's watching you, the hollowed circle?" Lila nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "They're planning something big. I overheard Silas talking about a ritual. They're going to perform it tonight." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "Where?" "In the woods," Lila said. "Near the old stone circle. They've been preparing for weeks. I tried to stay out of it, but they forced me to help. They said if I didn't, they'd hurt my brother." Marcus stepped closer, his tone gentle but urgent. "Lila, we need to know everything. What are they planning? What's the ritual for?" Lila hesitated, her gaze darting to the journal on the desk. "They're trying to summon Moloch the Unbound. They think he'll give them power, but I've seen what happens when they perform their rituals. It's not power they're after, it's destruction." Evelyn's mind raced. "We have to stop them. If they succeed, it won't just be Ravenswood in danger. It'll be everyone." Lila nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'll take you to the stone circle, but we have to be careful. Silas, he's not just a man. There's something wrong with him, something dark." The three of them left the manor, the night air thick with tension. Lila led them through the woods, the trees closing in around them like silent sentinels. The moon hung low in the sky, its pale light casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. As they approached the stone circle, the air grew colder, and the sound of chanting reached their ears. Evelyn's heart pounded as they crept closer, staying hidden behind the trees. The clearing was illuminated by flickering torches, their light casting long, dancing shadows. Silas Voss stood at the center of the stone circle, his arms raised as he chanted in a language Evelyn didn't recognize. Around him, members of the hollowed circle stood in a ring, their faces obscured by hoods. In the center of the circle was a figura young man, bound and gagged, his eyes wide with terror. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. "They're going to sacrifice him." Marcus gripped her arm, his voice low. "We have to stop them, but we're outnumbered." Lila's voice trembled as she whispered, "There's another way. The journal, it mentions a counter-ritual. If we can disrupt their ceremony, we might be able to stop them." Evelyn nodded, her mind racing. "We need to act fast. Marcus, create a distraction. Lila, help me with the counter-ritual." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful." He slipped away into the shadows, leaving Evelyn and Lila to work. Evelyn pulled the journal from her bag, flipping to the page that described the counter-ritual. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. As Marcus's distraction drew the attention of the hollowed circle, Evelyn and Lila began to chant the words from the journal. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Silas turned, his eyes locking onto Evelyn. "You?" he snarled, his voice filled with rage. "You dare interfere?" Evelyn stood her ground, her voice steady as she continued the chant. The torches flickered, their light dimming as the counter-ritual took hold. The bound man in the center of the circle cried out, his bonds loosening as the energy shifted. Silas raised his hands, his voice rising in a deafening roar. "You cannot stop us! The unbound will rise!" But it was too late. The counter-ritual reached its climax, and the ground beneath the stone circle cracked, a blinding light erupting from the fissure. The members of the hollowed circle scattered, their chants turning to screams as the energy consumed them. When the light faded, the clearing was silent. The stone circle was shattered, and Silas was gone. The bound man lay unconscious but alive, his bonds broken. Evelyn sank to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Marcus and Lila rushed to her side, their faces filled with relief. "We did it," Lila whispered, her voice trembling. "We stopped them." But Evelyn's eyes were fixed on the shattered stones, a sense of unease settling over her. Silas was gone, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Somewhere in the shadows, the raven cawed, its voice echoing through the night. The aftermath of the ritual left Evelyn, Marcus, and Lila shaken but resolute. They helped the young man, a local named Danielle, recover from his ordeal before escorting him back to town. He was too traumatized to speak, his wide eyes darting around as if expecting Silas or the circle to reappear at any moment. Evelyn promised him they'd keep him safe, though she wasn't sure how much she could truly guarantee. By the time they returned to Blackthorn Manor, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon. The manor felt different now, as if the events of the night had seeped into its very walls. Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, even as she locked the doors and drew the curtains. "We need to figure out what's next," Marcus said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "Silas is gone, but the hollowed circle isn't. They'll regroup, and they'll come after us." Evelyn nodded, her fingers absently tracing the raven and thorn symbol carved into the edge of the desk. The journal mentioned a seal, something that keeps Moloch the Unbound trapped. If we can strengthen it, maybe we can stop them for good. Lila, who had been quiet since they returned, spoke up. "The seal is tied to your family, Evelyn. The journal said the blood of the Blackthorn line holds the key. That means you." Evelyn's stomach churned. "What does that even mean? Do I have to perform some kind of ritual?" "Maybe," Lila said hesitantly. "But it's not just about the ritual. It's about understanding your family's connection to all of this. The journal is a start, but there's more. There has to be." Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "We need to find out what happened to your ancestors. If they were part of the original cult, there might be record something that explains how they sealed Moloch in the first place." Evelyn's mind raced. The town archives. Eleanor Graves might have something, but after last time, "We don't have a choice," Marcus said. "We'll have to risk it." Before they could make a plan, a sharp knock at the door made them all freeze. Evelyn's heart pounded as she approached the door, peering through the peephole. Standing on the porch was Reverend Amos Finch, his gaunt face shadowed by the brim of his hat. "Reverend Finch," Evelyn said, opening the door cautiously. "What are you doing here?" The Reverend's smile was thin and humorless. "I heard about the disturbance in the woods last night. I came to offer my assistance. These are dark times, and the people of Ravenswood need guidance." Evelyn exchanged a glance with Marcus, who stepped forward. "We appreciate the offer, Reverend, but we're handling it." Finch's eyes narrowed, his gaze flicking to the journal on the desk. "I see you've been delving into matters beyond your understanding. The Blackthorn legacy is a heavy burden, Miss Blackthorn, one you may not be equipped to bear." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I'll bear it just fine, thank you." The Reverend's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Very well. But remember, the Raven's mark is both a warning and a call. You would do well to heed it." With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing on the porch. Evelyn closed the door, her hands trembling. "What was that about?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Evelyn said, "but I don't like it." Marcus frowned. He's part of the hollowed circle. He has to be. Why else would he show up here? Evelyn's mind raced. If he is, then he knows we're onto them. We need to move fast. They spent the rest of the day poring over the journal, searching for any clue that might explain the seal or the Blackthorn family's role in maintaining it. As the sun set, Evelyn's eyes grew heavy, but she refused to rest. There was too much at stake. That night, as she lay in bed, Evelyn's dreams were filled with visions of the raven. It perched on a gnarled tree, its beady eyes fixed on her. The symbol of the raven and thorns glowed faintly in the darkness, and a voice whispered in her ear, a voice that was both familiar and alien. The seal weakens, the unbound stirs. You are the key. Evelyn woke with a start, her heart pounding. The room was dark, but the symbol on the doorframe glowed faintly, the thorns twisting and writhing like living things. She reached for the flashlight on her nightstand, her hand trembling. As the beam of light hit the doorframe, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A fresh carving, deep and jagged, of the raven and thorn symbol. It hadn't been there before. "Marcus," she shouted, her voice echoing through the manor. He burst into the room moments later, Lila close behind. "What's wrong?" Evelyn pointed to the doorframe, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Look." Marcus's eyes widened as he saw the symbol. "That's new." Lila stepped closer, her expression grim. "It's a warning. They're coming for you, Evelyn." Evelyn's mind raced. "We need to find out how to strengthen the seal. If we don't, they'll use me to break it." Marcus nodded, his jaw set. "First thing tomorrow, we go to the archives. We'll find what we need, no matter what it takes." As they left the room, Evelyn glanced back at the symbol, her unease growing. The raven's mark was more than just a warning, it was a call to action. And she knew, deep down, that the final confrontation was coming. The next morning, Evelyn, Marcus, and Lila made their way to the Ravenswood Historical Society. The building was quiet, the air thick with the scent of old paper and dust. Eleanor Graves was nowhere to be seen, but the door was unlocked, as if someone had been expecting them. "Stay close," Marcus whispered as they stepped inside. "We don't know what we're walking into." The archives were a labyrinth of shelves and filing cabinets, filled with documents dating back centuries. Evelyn's eyes scanned the room, searching for anything that might shed light on the Blackthorn family's connection to the seal. "Over here," Lila called, her voice barely above a whisper. She stood in front of an old, ornate cabinet, its doors carved with the raven and thorns symbol. Evelyn's heart raced as she approached. The cabinet was locked, but the keyhole was shaped like the symbol. She hesitated, then pulled the journal from her bag. Tucked inside the back cover was a small, ornate key. "It fits," she said, her hands trembling as she inserted the key into the lock. The cabinet creaked open, revealing a stack of yellow documents and a small, intricately carved box. Evelyn lifted the box, her breath catching as she opened it. Inside was a pendant raven, encircled by thorns, its eyes made of tiny, glimmering stones. "This is it," Evelyn said, her voice filled with awe. "This is what they've been after." Marcus frowned. "What is it?" "A talisman," Lila said, her eyes wide. "It's tied to the seal. If they get their hands on it, they can break it completely." Evelyn's grip on the pendant tightened. "Then we can't let them." Before they could say more, the sound of footsteps echoed through the archives. They turned to see Silas Voss standing in the doorway, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can stop us?" he snarled, his voice filled with rage. "The unbound will rise, and you will be the key to his freedom." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "It's over, Silas. We know how to strengthen the seal. You'll never break it." Silas laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You underestimate us, Miss Blackthorn. The ritual is already underway, and you will play your part, whether you want to or not." He raised his hand, and the air around them seemed to shift. Evelyn felt a sudden, overwhelming pressure, as if the very fabric of reality was bending. She clutched the pendant, its warmth spreading through her. "We need to go," Marcus said, his voice urgent. "Now." They ran from the archives, Silas's laughter echoing behind them. The streets of Ravenswood were eerily quiet, the town seemingly deserted. As they reached Blackthorn Manor, the sky darkened. the clouds swirling ominously. "The ritual," Lila said, her voice trembling. "They're doing it now." Evelyn's mind raced. "We need to perform the counter-ritual. If we can strengthen the seal, we can stop them." They gathered in the study, the pendant placed at the center of a hastily drawn circle. Evelyn began to chant the words from the journal, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. Marcus and Lila joined in, their voices blending with hers. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The pendant glowed, its light growing brighter with each word. Outside, the wind howled, and the sound of chanting reached their ears. Silas and the hollowed circle had arrived. The door burst open, and Silas stepped inside, his eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot stop us!" he roared, his voice filled with rage. Evelyn stood her ground, her voice rising above the chaos. "It's over, Silas. The seal will hold." Silas raised his hand, and the air around them seemed to shift. But Evelyn's resolve didn't waver. She stepped forward, the pendant glowing brighter with each step. "You will not break the seal," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Not while I'm here." The pendant's light erupted, a blinding wave of energy that filled the room. Silas screamed, his form dissolving into shadows as the light consumed him. The members of the hollowed circle scattered, their chants turning to screams as the energy consumed them. When the light faded, the room was silent. The pendant lay on the floor, its light dimmed but still glowing faintly. Evelyn sank to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "We did it," Lila whispered, her voice trembling. "We stopped them." Marcus helped Evelyn to her feet, his expression filled with relief. "It's over." But Evelyn's eyes were fixed on the pendant, a sense of unease settling over her. Silas was gone, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Somewhere in the shadows, the raven cawed, its voice echoing through the night. The days that followed were a blur. The town of Ravenswood began to heal, the shadows that had plagued it slowly receding. The hollowed circle was no more, its members either vanished or too afraid to show their faces. Evelyn, Marcus, and Lila became local heroes, though they kept the true nature of what had happened to themselves. Evelyn decided to stay in Ravenswood, determined to uncover more of her family's secrets and ensure the seal remained intact. Marcus returned to Boston, but not without a promise to visit often. Lila, free from the circle's influence, started a new life. Her psychic abilities no longer a curse, but a gift. But as the days turned into weeks, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching her. The pendant, now hanging around her neck, seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. And in her dreams, the raven still cawed, its voice a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the veil. One night, as she stood on the porch of Blackthorn Manor, Evelyn felt a familiar chill. She turned, her eyes scanning the shadows. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods, a tall, gaunt man with eyes that glowed like embers. But when she blinked, the figure was gone. Evelyn clutched the pendant, her resolve hardening. The seal was strong, but she knew the darkness would never truly be gone, and as long as it lingered, she would be there to stand against it. Somewhere in the shadows, the raven cawed, its voice echoing through the night.